15 years after first contact, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once the Coalition's geometric perfection had dominated the stars, now chaos and creativity bloomed on 1,000 worlds. The war was over, but its consequences were just beginning. Ambassador Tae-min stood before the new Galactic Senate, no longer representing just Korea but speaking for all of free humanity. The chamber itself was a testament to the changes humanity had brought. Instead of the Coalition's sterile perfection, the room was a riot of different architectural styles, each species contributing their own vision of beauty. Vextai representatives sat in crystalline chairs that had developed impossible, beautiful asymmetries. Morthak delegates occupied individual seats instead of collective platforms, each one decorated with personal artwork. Even the Zulnari had taken physical form for the occasion, their energy bodies housed in uniquely designed matter shells that allowed them to experience the meeting through multiple senses. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all forms, Tae-min began, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's incredible journey. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in something that has never existed before, a truly free galaxy. The transformation had not been easy. Entire Coalition worlds had dissolved into chaos, as species that had known only perfect order for millennia suddenly discovered individual choice. Civil wars had erupted on dozens of planets as old guard leaders tried to maintain control over populations that were learning to think for themselves. But humanity had been there to help, not as rulers, but as teachers. Human advisors worked with former Coalition species to build new governments based on representation rather than perfection. Human engineers helped redesign cities that valued beauty over efficiency. Human artists taught alien cultures how to express individual creativity. Admiral Sun Ho, now serving as Director of Galactic Defense, presented his report to the Senate. The numbers were staggering. Over 300 former Coalition worlds had requested human assistance in rebuilding their societies. Refugee populations from dozens of species had settled on human worlds, creating the first truly multicultural colonies in galactic history. The most remarkable change, Sun Ho reported, is not in our technology or our military capabilities. It is in how we think about conflict itself. He gestured to the display behind him, showing star maps of the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, there are no interstellar wars, not because of superior force, but because species are too busy exploring their own potential to fight with their neighbors. Captain Yuri, now commanding the exploration vessel New Horizon, had just returned from the galaxy's outer rim with the most exciting discovery of all. 3 previously unknown species that had been hiding in the void, afraid to make contact with the Coalition's perfect order. They call themselves the Wanderers, Yuri reported to the Senate. They've been traveling in generation ships for thousands of years, fleeing Coalition expansion. When they heard about humanity's victory, they came looking for us. The Wanderer delegation entered the chamber, and their spokesperson, a being that looked like living starlight, addressed the assembly in perfect, emotion-filled language. For 3,000 years, we have hidden in the dark between stars, afraid to build homes because the Coalition would find us and force us into their perfect molds, the Wanderer said. Today, for the first time, we dare to hope. We wish to build worlds again, to create art that has never been seen, to live lives that have never been imagined. Dr. Young A, now heading the Galactic Research Consortium, stood to present humanity's greatest gift to their new allies, the promise of infinite possibility. We have learned something important, she told the assembly. Every species we have encountered has capabilities that were suppressed by Coalition conformity. The Vextai are natural artists when freed from pure logic. The Morthak are incredible individuals when released from hive mind control. The Zulnari discovered joy in physical sensation. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives of dozens of species, all of them changed by their contact with humanity. But the most important discovery is this: diversity is not chaos, it is strength. A galaxy where every species thinks differently, creates differently, and dreams differently is stronger than any empire built on conformity. The Senate voted unanimously to establish the Galactic Freedom Accords as the foundation of interstellar law. But unlike the Coalition's rigid rules, these accords had only one fundamental principle. Every being had the right to choose their own path, as long as it didn't prevent others from doing the same. General Insu presented the new military doctrine that would govern galactic defense. Instead of conquest and subjugation, the new forces would focus on protection and liberation. Any species that tried to impose uniformity on others would face the combined might of the free galaxy. We have learned that the strongest defense against tyranny is not superior weapons, Insu explained. It is the absolute refusal to accept that any being has the right to control another's thoughts or choices. President Hyejin, now serving her third term as Earth's leader, addressed the Senate via hologram from Earth. Behind her, the rebuilt cities of humanity gleamed in the sunlight, now home to millions of beings from across the galaxy. 15 years ago we faced extinction, she said. We were told we were primitive, that our chaotic ways were inferior to coalition perfection. Today I look around this chamber and see the proof of humanity's greatest truth. There is no single correct way to exist. The celebration lasted for days, but the real work was just beginning. Colonel Jae Sung, now leading the Galactic Freedom Corps, had already identified 12 species still living under oppressive governments that claim to know the perfect way to live. Liberation operations will begin next month, he reported to the Defense Committee. But remember, we're not there to impose human values. We're there to give others the choice to discover their own values. Captain Yoonji commanded the first joint human-alien exploration mission beyond the galaxy's edge. Her crew was a mixture of humans, former coalition species, and newly contacted civilizations, all working together to discover what lay beyond the known stars. We don't know what we'll find out there, she told her diverse crew as their ship prepared for launch. But whatever it is, we'll face it together, each of us bringing our own unique perspectives to the challenge. The ship Galaxy's Hope launched from the orbital yards above New Earth, humanity's first colony world specifically built to welcome refugees from across the galaxy. As it disappeared into hyperspace, carrying representatives of 20 different species, it symbolized everything humanity had accomplished. Ambassador Tae Min remained in the Senate chamber long after the ceremonies ended, looking out at the star field visible through the transparent walls. Beside him stood Geometric Logic Veltan, one of the first Vextai to embrace individual creativity instead of perfect mathematics. Do you ever regret it? Veltan asked, her crystal form now decorated with patterns that followed no logical sequence, but were beautiful beyond description. Your species could have accepted coalition rule and lived comfortable, ordered lives. Taemin smiled, remembering the desperate fear he had felt 15 years ago when alien ships first appeared in Earth's sky. Comfort is overrated. Growth requires discomfort, change requires courage, and freedom. Freedom requires the willingness to fail. And if you had failed, then we would have died as ourselves instead of living as someone else's idea of perfection. As the years passed, the galaxy continued to change. Art galleries replaced weapons factories. Exploration ships carried scientists and poets instead of soldiers. Children of dozens of species grew up together on mixed colonies, learning from each other's cultures while developing their own unique identities. The humans, once dismissed as primitive savages, were now known by a different name throughout the galaxy: the Liberators. Not because they conquered, but because they freed others to become whatever they chose to be. And in the depths of space where new civilizations waited to be discovered, strange signals were detected by exploration teams. Signals that spoke of hope, of change, of beings who had heard the story of humanity's war and dared to dream of freedom. The galaxy that had once trembled at humanity's name in fear now whispered it with gratitude. And somewhere in the vast expanse of stars, new legends were being born. The war was over. The age of freedom had begun. Admiral Sunho, now elderly but still sharp, stood on the observation deck of the newest human ship, watching as it prepared for humanity's greatest adventure yet, the journey to other galaxies, carrying the message of freedom to beings who had never imagined that choice was possible. "Sir," his young aide asked, Do you think we'll find more species like the old coalition out there? Species that believe in enforced perfection? Sunho smiled, his eyes bright with the fire that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. Probably, and when we do, we'll show them the same thing we showed the coalition. What's that, sir? That perfection is the enemy of possibility, and possibility is what makes life worth living. 10 years of war had changed everything. The galaxy that had once trembled at coalition authority now watched human ships with something between fear and hope. Entire species were abandoning their homeworlds to escape the fighting, while others sent secret messages to human commanders, begging for liberation from the perfect societies that had imprisoned them for millennia. The Coalition High Command met in emergency session on the fortress world of Ultimate Authority, a planet-sized military base at the heart of their empire. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, they faced the possibility of defeat. The humans must be stopped, declared Supreme Logic Velmar, the highest-ranking Vextai in the Coalition. Her crystal form pulsed with colors that indicated extreme distress. They are not conquering our territories, they are infecting them with chaos. Hive Emperor Kreshtal, speaking for all Morthak everywhere, clicked his agreement. Our collective consciousness fragments wherever humans appear. Individual thoughts spread like a plague. If this continues, the hive mind itself will collapse. The Zulnari representative, Energy Supreme Zalketh, flickered with barely contained fury. They trap our essence in crude matter. They force beings of pure energy into physical form. This violates every law of advanced civilization. But even as the coalition leaders planned their final offensive, their empire was crumbling from within. On world after world, their perfect societies were discovering what humans had always known. Perfection was a cage, and freedom was worth any price. General Insu stood in the command center of his assault ship as it approached SciFiPrime, the insectoid species' homeworld. Around him, his staff monitored communications from the planet's surface, and what they heard was extraordinary. "Sir, we're receiving thousands of transmissions from individual Morthak," his communications officer reported. "They're not using hive mind protocols anymore. Each one is speaking for themselves." The transformation of Morthak society had accelerated beyond anyone's expectations. Beings who had shared collective consciousness for millions of years were discovering individual identity, personal creativity, and private thoughts. The planet's surface showed the results. Geometric hive structures were being rebuilt into unique, artistic designs as each Morthak expressed their newfound individuality. "This is Worker Unit, no, this is Klikta," came one transmission, the alien's voice uncertain but hopeful. "I have chosen my own name. I am building my own nest. I am thinking my own thoughts. Thank you, humans, for showing us that we are more than just parts of a machine." Dr. Youngi's greatest achievement wasn't a weapon or a defense system. It was a simple idea, that every being in the universe had the right to be themselves. That idea had spread faster than any virus, infecting every coalition world that humans touched. Captain Yunji led the human fleet in the largest space battle of the war, the Battle of the Three Suns, where all of coalition might gathered for one final attempt to crush human resistance. Over 10,000 alien ships filled the space around the Triple Star System, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "This is it," Yunji told her crew as they prepared for battle. "They're throwing everything they have at us. If we win here, the war is over." The coalition attack began with a coordinated assault that should have destroyed the human fleet in minutes. Reality warping weapons that could unmake matter at the quantum level, planet killer beams that could burn through stellar cores, and gravity manipulators that could crush entire fleets into singular points. But humanity had learned the most important lesson of the war. They didn't need to be better than their enemies. They just needed to be more stubborn. Admiral Sunho's flagship, the massive dreadnought Soul's Pride, took a direct hit from a reality warping weapon that should have erased it from existence. Instead, the ship's human crew simply refused to stop existing. The weapon, designed to work against logical beings who accepted the laws of physics, had no effect on humans who had already decided that impossible things happened every day. "Hull breach on deck 7 through 15, reported the damage control officer. "Reactor containment failing," added the chief engineer. "Main weapons offline," said the weapons officer. "Understood," Admiral Sunho replied calmly. "Continue firing." This was the mystery that alien scientists would study for centuries. How human ships continued fighting long after they should have been destroyed. How human warriors kept advancing even when logic said they should retreat. How an entire species could look at impossible odds and respond with determination instead of despair. The battle raged for 3 days. When it ended, both fleets were in ruins, but only the humans were still fighting. Coalition survivors watched in horror as human ships, reduced to half-melted wreckage held together by pure willpower, continued their attack runs. "They are insane," whispered Supreme Logic Velmar, as she watched her perfect battle plans crumble against human unpredictability. "No," replied a voice from behind her. She turned to see one of her own kind, a Vextai whose crystal form had developed impossible asymmetrical patterns. "They are free." The Coalition's defeat at the Three Suns marked the beginning of the end. Across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved by perfect civilizations for centuries began to remember what it meant to make their own choices. On the energy-being homeworld of pure thought, Zulnari, who had transcended physical form, began experimenting with material bodies, discovering the joys of taste, touch, and physical sensation. Their energy-based society, built on the belief that matter was primitive, began to appreciate the beauty of physical existence. President He Jin's message to the galaxy was broadcast from Earth, now rebuilt and stronger than ever. To every being who has been told they must think the same thoughts, live the same life, and dream the same dreams as everyone else, you have a choice. You can continue to be perfect, or you can choose to be yourself. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Coalition member species began declaring independence from the central government. Vextai colonies created art galleries instead of geometric perfection. Morthak hives became cities where individuals could pursue their own interests. Zulnari communities experimented with physical forms and material pleasures. But the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity itself. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive was now seen as the teacher of the most important lesson: that diversity was stronger than uniformity, creativity more powerful than perfection, and freedom more valuable than security. Colonel Jae-sung, now promoted to general, stood before the Coalition High Command on ultimate authority as they formally requested negotiations. The once mighty leaders of galactic civilization sat in a simple meeting room, their perfect confidence replaced by uncertainty and curiosity. "What do you want from us?" asked Supreme Logic Velmar. Jae-sung's answer was simple. "Nothing. We don't want to rule you, control you, or change you by force. We just want you to understand that there's more than one way to exist in this universe." "But our civilizations are collapsing," protested Hive Emperor Kreshtal. "Our people are abandoning the wisdom of millennia to pursue individual chaos." "Your people are growing," Jae-sung replied. "Growth is never comfortable, but it's the only way to truly live." Energy Supreme Zalkith flickered with confusion. "We achieved perfection. We transcended the limitations of lesser species. Why should we give that up for uncertainty?" "Because perfection is death," Jae-sung said quietly. "Perfect things can't change, can't grow, can't surprise themselves with what they might become. You didn't transcend limitations. You just found more comfortable cages." The negotiation lasted for weeks, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Coalition had two choices: adapt or die. And humanity had spent 10 years teaching the galaxy how to adapt. The war officially ended with the signing of the Galactic Freedom Accords, but the real victory was already visible across the stars. Former Coalition worlds were becoming something new, diverse, creative, chaotic, and alive in ways they had never been before. Admiral Sunho stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the celebration fleets gather from across human space. Ships from Earth, Mars, the asteroid colonies, and dozens of worlds that had joined humanity's cause filled the space around them. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command." "Put it through." President Hyojin's voice filled the bridge. "Admiral, the Coalition has agreed to our terms. The war is over. All human forces are to stand down and begin Phase 3 operations." "What's Phase 3, Madam President?" "Teaching the galaxy how to live with freedom. It's going to be the hardest job we've ever had." Sunho smiled as he looked out at the stars, where human and alien ships now flew together in formations that would have been impossible 10 years ago. The galaxy that had once trembled at humanity's name in fear was now learning to hope. But the humans knew something their new allies were just beginning to understand. The hardest battles were not against external enemies, but against the comfortable prisons that civilizations built for themselves. The real war for the galaxy's soul was just beginning. 5 years after the first alien ship had appeared near Jupiter, human fleets emerged from hyperspace in the outer reaches of the Vextai home system. The crystalline beings' perfect geometric cities glittered like jewels on a dozen worlds, never having known the touch of war. That was about to change. Admiral Sunho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the alien worlds grow larger on the main screen. Around him floated a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships built from asteroids and scrap metal, powered by fusion reactors that ran on pure human stubbornness, crewed by warriors who had learned to make gods bleed. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. Commander Dalho led the first strike force, a collection of converted asteroid ships that looked more like flying mountains than military vessels. They had traveled for months through uncharted space, using routes that existed only in the imagination of human navigators who refused to accept that something was impossible. "All units, this is Strike Leader Dalho," he broadcast to his fleet. "Remember, we're not here to conquer, we're here to teach." The Vextai home defense fleet met them at the edge of the system. 300 crystalline ships arranged in perfect mathematical formations that had never been defeated. Their admiral, a being of pure logic called Geometric Prime Velkoth, had studied every battle in Coalition history. Victory was a mathematical certainty. What Velkoth hadn't studied was human chaos. Dalho's ships scattered like leaves in a storm, abandoning all formation discipline. They attacked from impossible angles, used trajectories that defied military logic, and coordinated their assault through what the Vextai computers classified as organized randomness. "This is impossible," Velkoth calculated as human ships seemed to appear and disappear throughout the battle space. "Their tactics have no mathematical foundation. Their formations serve no logical purpose." Captain Yuri, leading a squadron of human fighters, provided the answer over the open communication channels. Her pilots had discovered something incredible. They could use art as a weapon. Each fighter moved according to patterns based on human music, poetry, and dance. The alien computers, designed to predict logical movement, couldn't calculate what a pilot might do when inspired by a half-remembered song from childhood. "You want logic?" Yuri laughed as her fighter spiraled through a formation of crystalline ships, her weapons firing in rhythm with an ancient Korean folk song. "Here's some human logic. If you threaten our families, we'll tear your perfect universe apart with our bare hands." The Vextai fleet, designed for precision warfare, shattered against human creativity. Ships that had never known defeat found themselves outmaneuvered by pilots who fought like they were painting masterpieces in three-dimensional space. But the real terror began when the humans landed on Vextai worlds. Colonel Jae-sung's ghost units had evolved beyond simple soldiers. They were now psychological warfare specialists, trained to break the minds of species that had never known fear. The Vextai, beings of perfect logic and mathematical precision, discovered that terror was not a logical response to calculated threats. The first attack came at a crystalline city called Perfect Harmony, where 10 million Vextai lived in geometric structures that hurt human eyes to look at. The ghost units didn't attack the city's defenses. Instead, they began changing things. Street patterns that had followed mathematical perfection for centuries suddenly had irregularities. Building facades that had been perfectly symmetrical developed random decorations. The crystal beings' ordered world became chaotic, and chaos was something their minds couldn't process. "What are they doing?" Geometric Prime Velkoth demanded as reports flooded in from across the system. "They're not conquering our worlds. They're redecorating them." The psychological impact was devastating. Vextai, who had lived for millennia, in perfect order, began to experience emotions they had no words for: confusion, uncertainty, artistic inspiration. Their crystalline forms began to change, developing asymmetrical patterns that their computers classified as impossible beauty. On the industrial world of logical purpose, human engineers introduced something the Vextai had never encountered: inefficiency. Factories that had run at perfect optimal capacity for centuries suddenly had workers who took coffee breaks, created art during lunch periods, and redesigned production lines based on what looked interesting rather than what was. Most efficient production fell by 30%. Worker satisfaction increased by 2,000%. Dr. Younge had been right about the Coalition's fundamental weakness. They had forgotten how to adapt. Each species had achieved perfection in their own way, and perfection couldn't change without destroying itself. But humans specialized in imperfection, and imperfection was infinitely adaptable. The war spread throughout Coalition space like a virus of chaos. Human fleets appeared in systems that had known only peace, bringing with them concepts that alien minds struggled to understand: creativity, improvisation, the stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. On Morthak Prime, the homeworld of the insectoid species, human bioweapons began changing the planet's ecosystem. But instead of destroying it, they made it more diverse. Plants grew in random patterns instead of efficient grids. Animals began exhibiting individual behaviors instead of hive-minded coordination. The Morthak collective consciousness, dependent on absolute unity, began to fracture. For the first time in their species' history, individual Morthak began having private thoughts, personal desires, original ideas. The hive mind tried to suppress these deviations, but it was like trying to hold back an ocean with a net. General Insu led the assault on the planet's capital, a massive hive structure that housed 50 billion interconnected minds. His strategy was simple: introduce the concept of individual identity to a species that had never experienced it. Broadcasting on all frequencies, his communications officer reported. "Attention, people of Morthak Prime," Insu began, using a word the aliens had never heard before. "People, not collective, not hive, but individuals with their own worth. Each of you has a choice. You can continue to be part of a group that thinks the same thoughts, or you can discover what it means to be yourself." The message was accompanied by human art, music, and literature translated into Morthak communications patterns. Stories about individuals who had chosen their own paths, songs about personal freedom, paintings that showed the beauty of chaos and imperfection. The response was immediate and devastating. Across the planet, individual Morthak began disconnecting from the hive mind. They looked around their geometric cities and asked questions that had never been asked before. Why do we all think the same way? What would happen if I made my own choices? What does it feel like to be me? The Morthak government tried to restore order, but how do you force someone to stop thinking individual thoughts? The more they tried to suppress the rebellion, the more it spread. Billions of beings who had shared one collective consciousness became billions of individuals, each with their own dreams and desires. The Zulnari posed a different challenge. As energy beings, they considered themselves above physical warfare, immune to the crude weapons that worked on material species. They had never been defeated because they had never truly been challenged. Captain Yunji changed that at the Battle of the Three Suns, where humanity faced all three coalition species. Simultaneously, for the first time, the Zulnari came confident in their invulnerability, beings of pure energy who could phase through solid matter and manipulate electromagnetic fields at will. They discovered that Dr. Younge's team had been busy. "Containment fields active," Yunji ordered, as the energy beings began their attack. Throughout the human fleet, specially modified weapons powered up, creating magnetic bottles that could trap energy as easily as matter. The first Zulnari to be caught screamed in frequencies that shattered crystal and melted metal. For the first time in their existence, they were trapped, contained, forced into physical limits. The sensation drove them to panic. "This is impossible!" Energy form Zilnash shrieked as human containment fields began trapping his warriors one by one. "We are beings of pure force. We cannot be imprisoned by primitive matter." "Everything's impossible until somebody does it," Captain Unji replied calmly. "That's the most human thing about us. We specialize in impossible things." The battle became legend throughout the galaxy. 3 coalition species, fighting with their most advanced weapons and their greatest warriors, were defeated by humans who had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. But the defeat wasn't just military. It was philosophical. Each coalition species had believed they had achieved the ultimate form of existence. The Vextai with their perfect logic, the Morthak with their unified consciousness, the Zulnari with their transcendence of physical form. They had conquered the galaxy because they were convinced they were superior to all other life. Humans proved them wrong, not by being better, but by being different, by refusing to accept that there was only one way to think, one way to live, one way to be. President Hyojin's final broadcast to the coalition leadership was simple and devastating. "You've spent 1,000 years convincing yourselves that you were perfect. But perfection can't grow, can't change, can't adapt. We're not perfect, and that's why we're going to win." 3 years into the war, Earth burned. The great cities of humanity lay in ruins, their skyscrapers twisted metal monuments to alien firepower. Mars had fallen after a brutal siege that lasted 8 months. The orbital stations that had been humanity's pride were now debris fields drifting through space. The coalition forces believed victory was within reach. Admiral Kethvor, now commanding the largest invasion fleet in coalition history, prepared for the final assault on Earth itself. But somewhere in the asteroid belt, hidden among the drifting rocks and ice, humanity was learning to fight back in ways the aliens had never imagined. Major Seok Jin floated in the airlock of his assault ship, checking his equipment one last time. Behind him, 20 of humanity's best soldiers waited in silence. They wore crude armor cobbled together from salvaged materials, carried weapons that looked primitive compared to coalition technology, and breathed recycled air that tasted like metal and fear. "Remember," Seok Jin told his team over the comm system, "we're not trying to capture the ship. We're here to learn how to kill it." The target was a Morthak hive ship, one of the massive vessels that served as both warship and mobile colony for the insect-like aliens. Intelligence suggested it carried over 50,000 Morthak warriors, all connected through their species' shared consciousness. The assault pods launched in silence, using minimal thrust to avoid detection. They looked like pieces of space, junk, and that was exactly the point. Dr. Young's team had learned that coalition sensors were designed to detect sophisticated threats, not crude human ingenuity. The pods struck the alien hull and burned through with thermite charges. Seok Jin was the first through the breach, his magnetic boots clanging against the alien metal. The interior of the ship was a nightmare of organic curves and clicking sounds, like being inside a giant insect's nest. The first Morthak warrior that met them died before it could even register the threat. Seok Jin's combat knife, crude steel, heated to 1,000 degrees, sliced through the alien's carapace like paper. The creature's death scream echoed through the hive ship's corridors. "Contact," one of his soldiers shouted. "Multiple hostiles, Corridor 7, but the humans weren't fighting like any species the Morthak had encountered before. They moved through the ship's passages like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, striking from unexpected angles. They used the alien ship's own structure against its defenders, turning air vents into sniper positions and maintenance shafts into ambush points. The Morthak hive mind, perfect for coordinated warfare in open space, became a liability in close quarters. When one warrior saw a human, they all saw it. But when that warrior died, they all felt the death. Fear, an emotion the hive mind had never experienced, began to spread through the ship like a virus. Seok Jin's team fought their way to the ship's computer core, leaving a trail of alien bodies behind them. But they weren't just killing, they were learning. Every dead alien taught them something new about coalition biology, technology, and tactics. Major, Sergeant Kyung-ho called out as he plugged a data extraction device into an alien computer. Terminal. I'm downloading their tactical databases. This is incredible. They have detailed information on every species they've ever conquered. And now we have it too, Seok-jin replied, watching the download progress. Around them, alarms screamed in alien languages as the Morthak realized what was happening. The extraction took 17 minutes. 17 minutes of desperate fighting, as thousands of alien warriors converged on the computer core. When it was finished, Seok-jin looked at his remaining soldiers. 7 out of 20 were still alive. Time to go home, he said. The escape was as brutal as the infiltration. They fought their way back to the breach point, carrying wounded comrades and stolen data. As their assault pod separated from the dying hive ship, Seok-jin triggered the thermite charges they had placed throughout the vessel's critical systems. The explosion tore the hive ship apart from the inside. 50,000 Morthak warriors died in the blast, but more importantly, humanity had proven something. Coalition ships could be boarded, Coalition warriors could be killed, and Coalition technology could be stolen. Dr. Young-A's team worked around the clock to analyze the captured data. What they found changed everything. The Coalition species, for all their advanced technology, had fundamental weaknesses that no one had ever exploited. The Vextai think in perfect logic, she explained to General Dong-su. Their battle tactics are mathematical formulas. If we can be unpredictable, chaotic, their command systems can't adapt. And the Morthak? Hive mind dependency. They share consciousness, which makes them incredibly coordinated but also vulnerable. If we can disrupt their mental connections, the entire hive becomes confused. What about the Zulnari? Dr. Young-A smiled grimly. Energy beings who think they're invulnerable to physical attacks. But we've found a way to trap energy in matter. Containment fields based on Earth's old magnetic fusion technology. The first test of humanity's new weapons came at the Battle of Titan. Captain Min-soo commanded the defense of Saturn's largest moon, where humanity had built their most important industrial complex. If Titan fell, Earth's war machine would die. With it, the Coalition attack fleet numbered over 300 ships, the largest force they had ever assembled for a single battle. Admiral Kethvor himself led the assault, determined to crush human resistance once and for all. Begin bombardment, he ordered as his ships moved into attack formation, reduce their industrial capacity to atoms. But as the Coalition fleet approached, Titan, they flew into a trap that had taken months to prepare. The moon's thick methane atmosphere, useless to most species, had been weaponized by human engineers. Hidden weapons platforms activated throughout the atmosphere, creating a killing field that extended far into space. What is this? Kethvor demanded as his tactical displays showed explosions throughout his fleet. Captain Min-soo's voice came over the communication channels, calm and deadly. Welcome to Titan, Admiral. Let me show you what humans do to uninvited guests. The battle raged for 6 months. Wave after wave of Coalition ships assaulted the human defenses, only to be torn apart by weapons they had never seen before. Fusion missiles that phased through energy shields, stealth fighters that appeared out of nowhere, suicide drones that turned destroyed human equipment into guided bombs. But the real shock came when Admiral Sunho arrived with Earth's latest creation, the first human dreadnought. Built from the hollowed-out asteroid series, it was larger than any Coalition ship and armed with weapons that made alien technology look primitive. The ship's hull was covered in captured Coalition technology, reverse-engineered and improved by human ingenuity. Its main weapon was a fusion cannon that could burn through a planet's crust. Its armor was layered with the crystalline material from destroyed Vextai ships. This is Admiral Sunho of the Earth Defense Force, came the broadcast to the Coalition fleet. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from Titan space or we will show you what happens when humans get angry. Kethvor's response was predictable. One ship cannot defeat our entire fleet. Surrender now and your death will be quick. Sunho's reply was simple. Fire. The fusion cannon's first shot vaporized 3 Coalition ships instantly. The second, shot punched through an entire formation, destroying 5 more vessels. By the time the third shot fired, the Coalition fleet was already beginning to retreat. For the first time in Coalition history, their forces were not retreating for tactical reasons. They were running in fear. The Titan victory, as it came to be known, marked the turning point of the war. Intercepted alien communications revealed something that chilled Coalition leadership to their cores. Their warriors were afraid of humans. The reports described human soldiers who fought like demons, appearing from nowhere and disappearing like smoke. Ships that refused to die even when reduced to molten metal. Weapons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. But most terrifying of all were the psychological profiles. Every other species the Coalition had conquered showed the same pattern. Initial resistance, gradual demoralization, and eventual surrender when the odds became hopeless. Humans showed the opposite pattern. The worse their situation became, the more dangerous they got. Defeat made them angry, and anger made them creative. They turned every loss into a lesson, every failure into a stepping stone to victory. As Admiral Kethavor's shattered fleet limped back to Coalition space, he sent a message that would change galactic history. Request immediate reinforcement. Classification, species level threat. Recommend extreme caution in future engagements. For the first time in their 1,000-year expansion, the Coalition was afraid of the species they were trying to conquer. On Titan, Admiral Sun Ho stood in his command center, looking out at the wreckage of the Coalition fleet. Around him, his officers celebrated humanity's first major victory, but Sun Ho was already planning the next phase of the war. Send a message to Earth Command, he told his communications officer. Phase 1 is complete. We've proven we can defend ourselves. Now it's time for Phase 2. What's Phase 2, sir? Sun Ho's smile was cold as the space between stars. We take the fight to them. The news of Hope Station's destruction and Captain Bora's last stand spread across Earth like wildfire. For the first time in human history, every nation put aside their differences. Old enemies shook hands. Ancient borders meant nothing. There was only one enemy now, and they came from the stars. President Hyojin stood before the United Nations, but this time it truly was united. The chamber was packed with leaders from every corner of the world. Her voice was calm, but her words carried the weight of humanity's future. Today we face extinction, she began. An alien force has demanded our surrender, our submission, and the death of most of our people. They have given us 72 hours to decide. She paused, looking across the faces of humanity's leaders. I stand before you not as the president of Korea, but as a voice for our species. And humanity's answer is simple. We will not go quietly into the night. The chamber erupted in applause that lasted for minutes. When it finally died down, Hyejin continued. From this moment forward, there are no more separate nations. There is only Earth, and we will defend our home with everything we have. General Dong-Su took command of Earth's newly unified military. He was a practical man who had spent his career planning for human conflicts. Now he faced something entirely different. How to fight enemies with technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities. We can't match their weapons, he told the Emergency Council. We can't match their ships, but we can match their determination. The transformation of human civilization happened faster than anyone thought possible. Every factory on Earth retooled for war production. Mining colonies in the asteroid belt became weapons platforms. Civilian ships were converted into fighters and transports. Dr. Youngie led the most important project of all, understanding alien technology. Her team worked around the clock, studying every piece of wreckage from Captain Bora's final battle. The Taekwondo had managed to scratch the alien ship's hull before dying, and those tiny metal fragments were humanity's first glimpse into Coalition technology. It's incredible, she told General Dong-Su during one of their late-night briefings. Their hull material is stronger than anything we've ever seen, but it follows the same physical laws as our materials. That means it can be damaged, it can be destroyed. Colonel Jae-sung was building something new, special forces trained specifically for fighting aliens. His ghost units learned to fight in zero gravity, to use weapons that worked in vacuum, to think like gorillas in three-dimensional space. The aliens expect us to fight like every other species they've conquered, he explained to his trainees. Organized formations, predictable tactics, surrender when the odds get bad. We're going to show them something different. The coalition expected their invasion to be routine. Admiral Kethvor, a crystalline being who had conquered dozens of worlds, commanded the invasion fleet with casual confidence. His force of 200 ships was larger than most coalition wars required, but High Command wanted to make an example of the stubborn humans. Begin standard bombardment pattern, he ordered as the fleet approached Earth's outer defenses. Target their military installations first, then their major population centers. Leave enough survivors for labor purposes. The first battle happened at Luna Defense Grid, a ring of weapons platforms and fighter bases that protected the Earth-Moon system. Captain Hyun-woo commanded the defense, knowing he was vastly outnumbered and outgunned. All units. This is Luna. Command, he broadcast to the human forces. We're not here to win, we're here to hurt them, make them pay for every meter of space. The alien ships advanced in perfect formation, their energy shields glowing like small suns. They had overwhelming firepower and superior technology. What they didn't have was experience fighting humans. The first surprise came when the human fighters didn't try to match the aliens in direct combat. Instead, they used tactics that seemed insane, ramming attacks against ships 10 times their size, nuclear mines disguised as space debris, kamikaze runs that turned destroyed human ships into guided missiles. Captain Hyun-woo watched his tactical display as human losses mounted. But he also watched alien ship icons disappear from the screen. Each human pilot who died took alien technology and alien lives with them. Sir, the aliens are requesting communication, his operator reported. Admiral Kethvor's crystal face appeared on screen, pulsing with confused colors. Cease this madness immediately. Your attacks are achieving nothing. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Hyun-woo smiled grimly. Admiral, let me explain something about humans. We'd rather die fighting than live kneeling. This is illogical, Kethvor protested. You cannot win. Maybe not, Hyun-woo replied. But we can hurt you. And that's enough. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it ended, the Luna defense grid was destroyed and Captain Hyun-woo was dead. But 30 alien ships were gone too, reduced to drifting wreckage and expanding clouds of gas. Admiral Kethvor stared at his casualty reports in disbelief. 30 ships, more than the coalition had lost in the past century of conquest. And this was just the outer defenses of one primitive planet. Request immediate reinforcements, he ordered his communications officer. Classification, priority maximum. Back on Earth, General Dong-Su studied the battle recordings with satisfaction. Yes, they had lost, but they had also learned. Each human death had revealed alien weaknesses, alien blind spots, alien assumptions about how wars should be fought. They expect us to fight fair, he told his staff. They expect us to follow the rules of civilized warfare. But civilization is a luxury we can't afford right now. Dr. Young-A's team made breakthrough after breakthrough, not by trying to copy alien technology, but by finding ways to destroy it. They developed new weapons based on human ingenuity, fusion bombs that could burn through energy shields, stealth fighters that used Earth's old radar jamming technology in ways the aliens had never seen. President Hae-jin addressed the world again as alien ships began bombing Earth's major cities. They want us to despair, she said as explosions lit the sky behind her. They want us to give up. But every human who has ever lived, every generation that has ever struggled, has led to this moment. We are the children of people who survived. Ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed weaker species. The speech was broadcast not just to Earth but throughout the solar system. Human colonies on Mars, mining stations in the asteroid belt, research bases on the outer planets, all heard the same message. We will not surrender, we will not give up, and we will make them remember the day they decided to fight humanity. Colonel, Jae-sung's ghost units launched their first operation against an alien supply ship that had strayed too close to the asteroid belt. Boarding pods, crude but effective, punched through the ship's hull. The aliens inside had never faced human soldiers in close combat. The crystalline Vextai found that their perfect logic was useless against human unpredictability. The insectoid Morthak discovered that their hive mind coordination fell apart when faced with individual human creativity. The energy-based Zulnari learned that humans could trap them in specially designed containment fields. When the supply ship went silent, Admiral Kethvor felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. "What happened to Supply Vessel 7? He demanded. The answer came an hour later when the ship's emergency beacon activated. Human voices filled the Coalition communication channels, speaking in a dozen different languages, but all saying the same thing. This is just the beginning. Inside the captured ship, Colonel Jae-sung's team worked frantically to download alien databases and steal whatever technology they could carry. But more importantly, they had sent a message that would spread throughout the Coalition fleet. Humans were not like other species. They adapted, they improvised, and they never ever gave up. As more alien reinforcements arrived in Earth's solar system, General Dong-Su smiled for the first time since the war began. Let them come. Each ship they sent would learn the same lesson Captain Bora had taught them at the very beginning. Humanity might be primitive, but they were far from helpless. The real war was just beginning. The alien ships appeared like silver tears in the black fabric of space. 3 massive vessels, each one larger than Earth's biggest city, emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter's orbit. Their hulls gleamed with a cold light that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Captain Bora stood on the bridge of her patrol ship, the Taekwondo, watching the impossible sight through the main screen. 20 years she had served in the Earth Defense Force, and never had she seen anything like this. The ships moved with perfect precision, their formation so exact it looked like they were connected by invisible strings. "Captain." Her communications officer called out, his voice tight with fear. "They're sending a message, text only, but it's in perfect Korean." Bora frowned. How could aliens know Korean? How could they know any human language? "Put it on screen." The message was simple and old. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet. You will prepare for diplomatic contact. Resistance will result in immediate termination. You have been warned." On Earth, President He Jin received the same message in perfect English, French, Chinese, and dozens of other languages. The aliens, it seemed, had been watching humanity for a long time. In emergency sessions around the world, leaders asked the same question. What did these beings want? The answer came 3 days later when the alien delegation arrived at New Seoul Station, humanity's pride and joy orbiting high above Earth. Ambassador Tae-min, Earth's most experienced diplomat, waited in the station's main conference room. His hands were steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead. The aliens who entered the room were nothing like the movies had prepared him for. The first was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body in patterns that made Taemin's eyes water. It spoke without moving any mouth, its voice appearing directly in his mind. "I am Crystalline Leader Veltar of the Vextai Empire. We represent the Galactic Coalition." The second alien was worse. It looked like a giant insect, but wrong in every way. Too many legs, eyes that moved independently, and a smell like rotting flowers. Hive voice Krethan of the Morthak Collective. It buzzed through a translator device. The third alien was the strangest of all. It had no solid form, just a shimmer in the air that occasionally took the shape of a humanoid figure. When it spoke, the lights in the room flickered. Energy form Zilnash of the Zulnari Ascendancy. Veltar's crystal body pulsed with different colors as it began to speak. "Your species has been observed. You show potential for basic labor and resource extraction. The Coalition offers you the privilege of joining our empire." Taemin kept his voice steady. "What exactly are you offering?" "Survival," Krethan buzzed, its mandibles clicking together. "Every species faces the same choice. Submit to Coalition authority or face extinction. There is no third option." The energy being Zilnash floated closer to the table. Your population will be reduced to manageable numbers, 1 billion individuals maximum. The rest will be recycled. Your planet's resources will be harvested efficiently. You will provide workers for coalition projects throughout the galaxy. Taman felt ice in his veins. And if we refuse? Veltar's crystal form brightened. Then you join the long list of species that no longer exist. We have eliminated over 300 civilizations that chose poorly. Would you like a demonstration of our capabilities? Without waiting for an answer, Cretan activated a device on its arm. The main screen in the conference room showed a nearby asteroid mining facility called Hope Station. 3,000 miners worked there, harvesting rare metals for Earth's growing space industry. Observe, Zilnash whispered, and one of the alien ships turned toward the asteroid. A beam of pure energy, brighter than the sun, lanced out from the ship's hull. Hope Station, solid rock and metal that had taken years to build, simply ceased to exist. The asteroid, the facility, and every human soul aboard vanished in a flash of light. 3,000 of your kind, Veltar said calmly. Deleted in 0.7 seconds. This was a minor demonstration using secondary weapons. The silence in the room was deafening. Taman stared at the empty space where Hope Station had been, thinking of the miners' families back on Earth. Men and women with children, dreams, hopes for the future. All gone. You have 72 hours to provide your government's answer, Cretan buzzed. Submit to coalition authority, or share the fate of Hope Station on a planetary scale. But Taman was no longer listening to the threats. Something had changed in his mind when he watched 3,000 people die for the aliens' amusement. A cold anger, deeper than anything he had ever felt, settled in his chest. I can give you our answer right now, he said quietly. The three aliens turned their attention to him. Veltar's crystal body flickered with what might have been amusement. How refreshingly efficient. Your species chooses submission? Taman stood up slowly. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with fury. Our answer is no. Humanity does not kneel to murderers. The room fell silent. For a long moment, the aliens simply stared at him as if he had spoken in an unknown language. Finally, Zilnash began to laugh, a sound like static electricity. Did this primitive just refuse the coalition? Did it not understand the demonstration? Perhaps their brains are too small, Cretan clicked. Shall I explain again using smaller words? But Veltar was studying Taman more carefully. Something in the human's expression made the crystal being pause. In 1,000 years of coalition expansion, no species had ever refused after seeing a demonstration of their power. You understand that this means the complete extinction of your species? Veltar asked. We understand perfectly, Taman replied, but you clearly don't understand us. You think showing us your weapons will make us afraid. Instead, you've shown us exactly what we're fighting against. He walked to the window that looked out over Earth, the blue and white marble that held everything humanity had ever known or loved. You made one mistake today. You showed us who you really are. Not gods, not superior beings, just bullies with big weapons. And there's one thing bullies never understand about humans. He turned back to face the three aliens, and his smile was cold as space. We don't break. We don't bend. And when someone threatens our home, we fight back. The meeting ended with the aliens departing in obvious confusion. They had conquered over 300 species, and never had they encountered a reaction like this. As their shuttle left New Sol Station, Veltar found itself troubled by something it couldn't name. On the bridge of the Taekwondo, Captain Bora received new orders from Earth Defense Command. The message was simple: prepare for war. As the alien fleet moved into attack formation, Bora looked at her crew. Young faces, scared faces, but determined faces. Today we make history, she told them. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. The first shots of the war were fired an hour later, when the Taekwondo refused to stand down. The small patrol ship lasted exactly 43 seconds against the alien dreadnought's main guns. But before her ship died, Bora managed to send one final message that would echo across the stars. Remember us. Remember that we chose to fight. The war had begun,